I've always been curious about. I think you mentioned it slightly during the interference section of the book, but looking at, weightlifting is a strength sport. So talking about snatch and clean and jerk, it's still a strength sport, but there is a little bit more of a, we call it quote unquote power, rate of force development, whatever you want to call it, a faster force production element to it. Now, granted, the best weightlifters in the world are strong as hell. Like, I don't know if there's anyone who's a great elite weightlifter who's weak. But do you think, like, is there more you have to take into account if you want to compete in Olympic lifting and an endurance sport, or think about transferring from powerlifting to, moving towards weightlifting as your strength sport? Are there some more pieces you have to keep in mind there?
Yeah, certainly. And that's probably the variable that's, I think, most at risk. So I try not to say like, oh, it always gets affected by the interference effect, but it's most at risk. And that's kind of backed up by a number of meta-analyses recently where, over 10 years ago now, they showed some decrease in strength and hypertrophy and power. Recent ones are saying actually, with other studies, we're starting to see less of an impact on strength and hypertrophy, but the one most at risk is, call it explosive power. And that's likely because it is utilizing, the very fast twitch fibers, which fatigue very easily. And it takes a while for them to recover. There's an interesting study by he worked with rugby sevens players, and he looked at the recovery over a certain amount of time based on when things were trained. So, you'd measure things 3 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours later. What he often found that those that trained between, there was a space of 6 hours, there wasn't any effect in strength. But when they used a dynamometer, you've seen the dynamometer where you're kind of like stuck in a chair and then you do a leg extension. So it's measuring the torque from the quad. That when that was done at a high rotation speed, they did still see a decrement that wasn't really fully recovered. Like if you wanted to carry on developing strength, 6 hours was probably okay. If you want to develop more speed of movement, we were starting to see that wasn't fully recovered unless you trained like 24 hours later. Big caveat here is that, this is very much localized to the muscle because, you're locked into a chair. It's very much what's happening at the quad. And also shows why, improvements in squat can still increase. You might still have some fatigue at the muscular level in the quad, but overall you're recovered to improving overall strength. But it just really highlights that really at the muscular level, like very high speed movements, fatigue of the muscle can take a while to recover. So no wonder that's the quality that seems to be at most risk. So I remember speaking to Alex Blennis not too long ago. We were talking about what would be the most impressive hybrid challenge. And we would say, okay, an ultra marathon, because you need loads of time on feet to be able to deal with that type of volume of running. But at the same time, weightlifting, because of, those fast twitch fibers are the ones that are probably going to be most affected by the huge volume of running that you're doing. So, gaining strength alongside training for an ultra marathon would be easier than it would be if you're doing a weightlifting competition.